Hey there, I'm Kyle Wilson, and today I wanted to share my story, which details how I went from being an 11-year-old programming hobbyist to 12 years later when I'm an accomplished software developer who's freelanced and worked in companies big and small. There's not going to be any code to go over in this video, so I'll just put on some nature public domain videos in the background. That way we have something nice to look at while we talk. So my coding journey actually started back in 2008 when I was a middle schooler, and like most other middle schoolers, I loved video games and probably played them more than I should, but regardless, eventually I wanted to make my own video game. And I went on Google and I looked up how to do so, and they said you need to learn how to code. So I went on YouTube and I typed in C++ tutorial. I started watching tutorial after tutorial, rewatching them as many times as I needed to understand the content. But eventually, I just fell in love with the process of coding more than actually making video games. So I can remember sitting in history class and I would just start to write code on paper to pass the time of class and to practice my skills. But all of this really showed me that once I got to high school, I wanted to take every single programming class that I could and enter any competition that was available, and that's exactly what I did. So once I got to high school, there were no programming classes available for freshmen or sophomores, but by the time I got to my junior year, I was allowed to take Intro to Programming. And luckily for me, I had a very active and passionate teacher for this class, and he recognized that, hey, Kyle's been coding for years. There's no reason to have him build a basic calculator or like a string concatenation assignment because he's already been doing this stuff. So instead, my teacher signed me up as a teacher's aide, and I went around the room and I would help other students that were struggling. And this really gave me a lot of experience in reading other people's code, as well as talking about technical concepts. After seeing that I really enjoyed doing this kind of stuff, my teacher encouraged me to sign up for BPA competitions, which are Business Professionals of America competitions. So I signed up for a Java programming competition, an IT concepts, and programming concepts competition. And at my state level, I placed in all of them, which I was thrilled with. But all of this really allowed me to see the impact that programming has on people's lives. Like, I understood I was just coding simple things for competitions or little throwaway scripts for schoolwork, but it occurred to me that programming really matters. Like all the cell phones we have in our pockets, those were all programmed. The things that sent people to the literal moon, those were all programmed by people just like me. And there's code that literally keeps people alive. Like the pacemakers in people's hearts that keep them beating are coded by someone. And once I had this little click in my brain, that really solidified that I know this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So in 2015, I graduated high school, and in that summer before college started, I wanted to get some real world experience doing this kind of stuff. That way, I would actually know if I liked the day to day. Unfortunately, I was not able to find a programming position, but I was able to find a WordPress developer position at a local IT company. So I took that just to get my foot in the door, and my boss knew that I loved to code, and eventually programming work did come through the company, and my boss allowed me to have a shot at it. So I ended up doing some automated scheduling work using Python for a local plastic producing company. Once college started, I ended up moving on from that job. That way I could focus on college, but after a few years of being in college, you get used to the routine, and I ended up picking up another web development job. And they said that, hey, we know that you can code and we like that, but we don't have constant programming work, but if it does come through, we'd be able to give it to you. So I immediately jumped on that, as well as a computer science tutoring position that was put on by my university. So I ended up tutoring in Intro to C Sharp, Advanced C Sharp, data structures, and analysis of algorithms. And I believe that teaching is the best way to learn. If you try to teach someone something and there's gaps in your knowledge, they're going to become apparent very quickly. That way, you and your student can both learn from your mistakes. And I firmly believe that you should ask for help when you need it and give help whenever you can. During my last few years of college, I knew that I wanted to get more direct programming experience, so I moved on from the WordPress job and I started looking for programming only jobs. But the issue is I couldn't find any in my local area, so I ended up making it myself. I became an independent contractor for Python automation, and I'll be honest, I'm no salesman. I only got one client, but that was enough to sustain my college lifestyle. But honestly, this gave me such great experience, and I really fell in love with the process of meeting with clients, listening to their needs, and then solving it with software. It really warms my heart to see my clients get all giddy because they can see that, hey, my automation script just saves them 4 hours of work every week just with a double click of the mouse. So I continued to freelance up until 2019, where I graduated from the University of Southern Indiana with a bachelor's in computer science. So with my degree in hand, I moved to the capital of Indiana to look for a W-2 position, and that's what I found. I became an automation engineer for software quality assurance, and I really enjoyed the work. I really enjoyed just automating things over and over again. As boring as that sounds to most people, that's just my cup of tea. But eventually, after about 6 months, I just realized this company wasn't the right fit for me. So I took a gap year to start thinking about, what do I want from a job? What do I want from my career? But during this time, I didn't want to just be a bump on a log, so that's when I started my YouTube project. So I created this channel as a way to give back to the community that taught me how to code all the way back in 2008. So that brings us to 2021, where at the beginning of this year, I started working at a startup as a Python developer. But after about 7 months, I found that that company just wasn't the right fit for me either. And during the exit interview, they said something that stuck out to me. They said I was performing at a senior level, which is also what my first W-2 position told me during our exit interview. So now that I've heard multiple companies tell me that I'm senior level, I've finally gained the confidence that I'm going to apply for senior only positions. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to keep making YouTube videos for you guys as much as I can. So that's my story as to how I went from being an 11-year-old who wrote code on paper to pass the time in class to an accomplished software developer 12 years later. I hope this encourages some of you to go out there and apply for some jobs you otherwise wouldn't have. But thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed.